What if I told you that you could disappear without actually going anywhere? That people could stop seeing you? That moment when you stop creating or working. It sounds dramatic, right? Yeah, I know, but I have to somehow start the video to make it sound interesting. And still, the question is valid. If you have ever stepped away from your work, maybe due to burnout, a career shift, or just life getting in the way, you have probably felt it. That weird, hollow feeling, that fear creeping in. Who even am I if I'm not doing this? And if you have been there, I need you to hear this. That fear is not about creativity, is not about your work. It goes deeper. It's about identity, self-worth, and the stories that we have been told about what makes us valuable. I have been through an identity crisis several times in my life, and I thought, I can't be the only one. So I thought it would be worth sharing it with you and talk about it with you. So if someone asked, who are you? What's the first thing you would say? Most of us would answer probably with a role, a job, a label of some sort. I'm an artist. I'm a writer. I'm a therapist. I'm an entrepreneur. I run a business. But if I took that label away from you, then who are you? That question alone makes some of us already feel confused, irritated. What is this woman talking about? Because we don't just do things, we become them. And that's where things can get really dangerous. Because what happens when we stop doing that thing? When creativity or our career or whatever role we have built ourselves around isn't there anymore. And it doesn't just feel like a break, it can feel like a full-blown identity crisis. I know this firsthand. When I burned out and stopped making art, I didn't just feel lost or I'm just taking a break. I felt like I had disappeared or like a big part of me was chopped off. It was quite a distressing time in my life, I admit. That last time when I closed the door to my studio felt so painful, as if I have given up on myself, as if I have resigned. I was not here anymore, but I was not there, whatever that there would have been yet. I was in that uncomfortable in-between space, and I didn't know anymore who I was without the thing that I have been committing over 20 years of my life to. And at that point, I had lost all my joy, all my passion for painting, for creating, for art. I couldn't even look at things anymore that just vaguely resembled art. I resented it all, and I didn't know what I'm passionate about anymore. I didn't realize it at that time, but what I was going through was actually grief. And yes, grief isn't just about losing people. We grieve careers, identities, versions of ourselves we thought were permanent. And that grief comes with all that same emotions: denial, anger, sadness, bargaining, you name it, everything at once, or nothing, this emptiness. Maybe if I push through, I will feel like myself again. Maybe I was never really an artist in the first place. Maybe this is just who I am now, this empty shell. The fear of not knowing who you are anymore can be worse than the fear of failing, because it really hits deep into the core. So we do anything to avoid that feeling. And that is how people are wired. We put much more energy into avoiding things than into gaining something, because the experience of loss can Of course, the sound died in the middle of me filming the video. So, part 2. Where was I? Yeah. I was talking about grief and how painful loss feels, so that we avoid it. We force ourselves to keep going because the alternative, stepping back and see what else could be there, feels like losing ourselves entirely before we found that else. So far, we are just confronted with the big unknown out there. And this is in and of itself scary. So that phenomenon of us becoming the thing we do is called role identity attachment by psychologists. As you know, there's a word for everything. Everything is so tied to who we think we are, and therefore also rigid. There's no space to breathe and discover, so to speak. And this is another reason why people stay in jobs they hate, in relationships they have outgrown, or projects that drain them. Because even if they are unhappy, it still feels safer and more comfortable than the big unknown out there. There are no rules yet in the unknown that can be defined. Who do we have to be in this future, in this space? How do we have to behave? It is like the ground underneath is shaking. And to make it even worse, the more time, energy, and emotional investment we put into something, the harder it is to pause or just walk away. That is again the sunk cost fallacy at work. That mind F that I talked about in my last video. I will link it here somewhere, maybe at the end of this one. So the dangerous part of defining who we are through what we do and how much we do of it is when we connect our value to it, when we cannot separate our being from our doing, and when being, just being, becomes empty, boring, and we don't know what to do with this time, with ourselves. And so we begin to feel worthless, empty. And so in a fun twist, we think we know who we are because of that thing, excuse me, that work, in what area we work in. But actually, we have lost ourselves in the meantime, our ability to see life and ourselves with all the other worthwhile things in it that also bring joy, that also make us feel happy, that also fulfill us. And so in the worst case, we find ourselves in that loop. I do this, I feel like myself. I'm worthy and valuable. I stop doing it. I feel lost. I'm worthless. What the hell is the point? Therefore, I must keep doing it to prove I still am who I think I am, and to prove I'm worth something. And if you feel like this, please take yourself by the shoulders now and shake yourself. Because what is it specifically that you are losing? Are you losing anything to begin with? I think we need to flip the question. Instead of asking ourselves, who am I if I'm not doing this? We could rather ask, who am I even when I'm not doing this? Subtle, but important. Because even when you're not making something, even when you're in between jobs, or in between ideas, you are still thinking, breathing, absorbing, observing, seeing things in a way that only you can. And this is a real issue, and it can be difficult at times because we have been conditioned to believe our worth is in our output. So that if we are not achieving, producing, or contributing at all times, we're failing, we're losers, we are less than. That rest is laziness. I know that. I know this. That our value is measured in results, in numbers, and accomplishments. Would you ever look at a friend of yours and say, "You only really matter to me when you are productive"? Would you tell them? And if you stop what you're doing, you stop being valuable to me. I mean, there are friends like that existing, but maybe you should then reconsider the friendship. Because normally, of course not. But we tell ourselves that every day or almost every day. So what can we do about this now? We could recognize grief for what it is. If stepping away from your work feels painful, it's because it mattered. That doesn't mean it's gone forever. It means you are evolving and you have the right to grieve it. So take your time to feel this grief. I know this is very painful, but ignoring grief will backfire at some point. I can promise you that. Then redefine what success actually means to you. Is it success you're after, or external validation, status, other people's ideas of success? What do you value in life? What matters to you? What interests you? Another thing you can do is detach yourself from the pressure to constantly produce. If you need a break, please take one. If you need to experiment, please let yourself play. Not everything has to lead somewhere. Inevitably, it does. Because when you take a break, you recharge. When you play, you get new ideas. So it leads somewhere. But you know what I mean. And last but not least, redefine your worth. Instead of measuring your value by output, measure it by how you experience the world. Are you still curious? Are you still learning? Of course, then nothing is lost. Live life and give yourself permission to sometimes just exist. You are not a factory. You are not a machine. You are not here to just perform. You have value because you're here. End of. And you could also ask yourself, how would you like to be remembered? Would you like to be remembered as the person with the biggest or most houses in the neighborhood? As the person who brings home the biggest salary? The person who exhibited in the most important museum in the world? Or would you like to be remembered fondly, with love, with a smile on people's faces when they think of you? And if that, what does that then say about you and who you were? That might be the clue, the direction you would like to find out for yourself. So if you have ever felt like you're disappearing in the moment you stop creating, pause. You're still here. Your mind, your way of seeing, your unique way of existing in the world, it's still there. Creating is and will always be a part of you. But this part of you also needs to take in a bit of life to create something meaningful. And maybe, just maybe, it was never about proving anything in the first place. So that's it from my side and the things I wanted to share with you. I would love for you to drop a comment if you ever connected yourself a tiny bit too much to the thing you do to define your worth and value. And how did it change you? And how did you solve this dilemma for yourself? If you did, let us all know. So I hope I see you next time again. If you want more on creativity, self-worth, and making things that actually matter, like living life in the best way possible for you, hit subscribe, like, share with friends, share. We're just getting started. Oh, wow, that sounds like a threat. Bye for now. See you next time. Hopefully. Bye.